Modern sci-fi has grown a lot over the last several years, especially because visual effects have improved and streaming platforms are backing bigger, more ambitious stories. Big series can now deliver scale and detail that used to be limited to theaters, and shows like Foundation prove that sci-fi on television can look massive. But even though streaming has raised the bar, there's still something special about seeing a major sci-fi story unfold on the big screen, because the scale, sound, and visuals hit differently in a theater setting. That's why one franchise stands out as the strongest modern sci-fi series right now, and it's coming back in 2026 with a movie that could permanently reshape how people see it. That franchise is Dune, and its next chapter is set to be a turning point in more ways than one. The upcoming third film isn't just another sequel, it also marks the final time director Denis Villeneuve will lead the series. Because Villeneuve has been the creative force behind the current Dune movies, his departure changes the future of the franchise in a big way. He's not just any director attached to a sci-fi property, he's also responsible for films like Arrival and Blade Runner 2049, which are widely seen as modern genre standouts. So when he steps away after the third film, the series loses the filmmaker whose style and tone defined it. Even though no additional Dune sequels have officially been announced beyond the third movie, the book series itself includes a bunch of follow-ups that could be adapted later. Villeneuve has made it clear that while he personally doesn't plan to continue after Part 3, he isn't blocking others from continuing the saga. He has openly said the door stays open for someone else to take over. That matters because it shows the franchise could continue, although it would move forward without the same creative voice that shaped its current success. Because his visual language and pacing are built into the first two films, any continuation would naturally feel different. Villeneuve has also explained that the third movie will plant story elements that point toward future arcs, even though he won't be the one directing them. That creates an interesting situation where the film works both as a conclusion to his run and as a possible bridge to what comes next. But it also raises a fair question about whether continuing without him is the right move, because his creative identity is deeply tied to how this version of Dune works on screen. When a director's fingerprints are all over a franchise, replacing that leadership changes the experience, even if the story continues. The third film will also transform the story itself, not just the creative team behind the camera. The first two movies followed Paul Atreides' rise, from displaced heir to desert survivor to emerging ruler of Arrakis. Audiences watched him grow into a messianic figure among the Freemen, and the story framed him as a powerful chosen leader. But the next chapter shifts perspective because it deals with the consequences of that rise instead of the climb itself. So instead of a young hero discovering power, the story moves toward a worn, burdened ruler dealing with the fallout of what he set in motion. The next installment is expected to draw heavily from Dune Messiah, which takes place years after Paul takes control. In that part of the story, he isn't an idealistic figure anymore. He's older, more hardened, and weighed down by the violence tied to his rule. His status as a savior figure leads to massive destruction across the galaxy, and he has to live with that outcome, even though his prophetic visions suggest the alternatives were worse. Because of that shift, audiences will see a very different version of Paul, and that character change alone could redefine how the entire trilogy is viewed. Villeneuve has spoken about what themes matter most to him in adapting these books. He focused on the idea that Dune is a cautionary tale about charismatic leaders and the danger of mixing religion with politics. Even though adaptations always require changes and cuts, he believes the films stay true to that core warning from Frank Herbert's novels. He also highlighted the emotional center of the story, the relationship between Paul and Chani, as one of the most important threads. That relationship becomes more complicated going forward, which means the emotional angle remains central, not just the spectacle. When talking about the third movie's direction, Villeneuve gave a simple but important story hint. Paul ends up starting a war in order to protect the people closest to him. That lines up with the trajectory already shown, because the end of the second film sends Paul and the Fremen into a larger conflict. But the book version of Dune Messiah doesn't focus mainly on battlefield action. It spends a lot of time on political tension, conspiracies, and internal struggles inside the Empire. So the film version will likely rebalance that material, keeping the political drama but giving more screen time to large-scale events. In the novel timeline, the story jumps forward about 12 years. Paul is emperor, and the Fremen Jihad carried out in his name has killed billions. He understands the cost of what happened, although his foresight shows that other paths might have led to even worse outcomes. That moral weight sits on him constantly. His personal life is also strained because he is politically married to Princess Irulan but emotionally committed to Chani. Irulan, acting under orders from powerful factions, secretly prevents Chani from becoming pregnant, which creates another layer of betrayal and manipulation inside the court. Several groups work together to weaken Paul's rule, including the Bene Gesserit, the Spacing Guild, and the Tleilaxu, a secretive civilization known for advanced genetic engineering. They send Paul a clone of Duncan, Idaho as a political and psychological weapon, placing someone close to him who may not truly be loyal. Because multiple factions in this struggle can see possible futures, their prophetic abilities interfere with each other, which makes outcomes harder to predict. That uncertainty increases the tension because Paul cannot rely fully on his visions anymore. Chani eventually finds a way around the sabotage affecting her fertility and becomes pregnant, but the long period of interference damages her health. She dies giving birth to twins who inherit unusual awareness and ancestral memory similar to Paul's sister. Around the same time, a major attack blinds Paul and causes heavy casualties. Faced with loss and exhaustion, he chooses to step away from power and disappear into the desert, leaving the Empire to his family line. That ending pushes the story into a reflective, consequence-driven place instead of a victory celebration. For the film version, not every book element will likely receive equal attention. Villeneuve tends to prioritize strong visual sequences and emotional through lines, so large conflicts, assassination attempts, and key turning points will probably get the most focus. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.